I'm always very thankful whenever I have the opportunity to give a lesson before you. And this evening I do have a story for you, as has been custom whenever Williams gets up here to speak. But this story actually comes from Alicia. She heard it. She's like, you got to give a devotional on this story. So if you love the devotional, thank Alicia. If you don't like the devotional, blame me, because it's obviously how I delivered it. It wasn't her idea. So the story goes that there was an older philosophy teacher who was teaching a philosophy class, and he began to wrap up the semester. He began to wrap up his semester of teaching, and as he was wrapping up the class, he asked the students, do you have any more questions? And the class was quiet, as most classes are, and then all of a sudden, one student raises his hand with a kind of a smirk on his face, and he goes, yeah, I have one more question. What is the meaning of life? And the entire class kind of laughs. They're still packing up their stuff because no philosophy teacher is going to answer this question. People have been studying this and trying to figure it out for years and years. No philosophy teacher would even think about answering this. So the class begins to pack up, and the teacher smiles, and he goes, I will answer your question. I will tell you what the purpose of life is, what the meaning of life is. So all the students stopped, and they wanted to listen to see what this teacher had to say. He pulled out a small round mirror out of his pocket, and he told him that whenever he was a little kid, there was an auto accident that happened outside of his house. And whenever they were cleaning it up, they didn't get it all. And there was pieces of mirror left on the side of the road. And so, being a curious little kid, he walked out and he grabbed the biggest piece he found. And he tried to get all the pieces to reconstruct the mirror, but he couldn't do it. He was stuck with this one big piece that he had. And so he worked with a rock and he filed it down until it was just a nice little circular mirror. And he still had it on him. But as a kid, he would walk around with that mirror and he'd play a little game with himself. He'd see where he could get the light from the sun redirected to. How many dark places could he get the light to go into? How many little crevices under rocks, where could he get this light? And as a kid, it was just a fun game to him, a way to entertain himself whenever he was bored. But as he grew, as he learned more, he realized that this little mirror that he always had represented so much more than just a fun game. He realized that it was the meaning of life. And he told his students that the purpose of life is to be like that mirror, to reflect goodness, to reflect positivity and light into the darkest places and to everybody that you come into contact with. And at this point, all the students are just flabbergasted that this professor was able to tell them the meaning of life. And many of the students really took it to heart and tried to mimic that mirror. And so I heard this story, and Alicia said, yeah, you got to tell this. And I was like, yeah, I got to tell this. Because as Christians, this is so obviously a connection to our life. We, as Christians, need to be that mirror. We need to be that mirror that reflects the light of God, that reflects the love of God into the world. We as Christians are the only ones that truly get the love of God, the light from God shown on us. And so if we as Christians can reflect that light into the world, that's the meaning of our life. So let's turn to Matthew chapter 5, and we'll be reading verses 14 through 16. There's no way to talk about light as a Christian and not read these verses. Starting in verse 14, it says, Ye are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick, and it giveth light unto all that are in the house. Let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. We always sing a kid's song, This Little Light of Mine. But that's how we should all live our lives. We should live our lives letting God's light reflect off of us and into the darkest parts of this world. And to everybody who is having a bad day, everybody who's struggling, we can be that mirror and reflect it into the world. And so tonight I challenge us all to be a little bit more like that little mirror that professor carried around. And as you go through this week, as you go through your life, try to reflect just a little bit of positivity, a little bit of God's light into somebody else's life and see the amazing, amazing impact that you can have. At this time, if you have any needs of the congregation, please come forward as we stand and sing.